No, I was asking you earlier about this. How do you get to be a globetrotter?
Well, it's just you gotta go to, if you stay in school and go to college, mostly they'll pick you up if you're a good player and you have something like that, something special, like you can jump, you quick, you can dribble or something like that. They'll recruit you and you can go to camp and try out.
Great. Well, I'll tell you what, we want to watch a little bit of what you can do. I'm going to goof off with you too a little bit. Is that right?
That's fine.
Don't hurt me or anything, all right? 'Cause, you know, you can tell by the way I look. I'm not that great. Here you go. All right. Time to go to Nightly tonight. With that, we'll see you folks a little bit later. Mark, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Good to see you. Harlem Globetrotters tonight at Vets Auditorium. Bye-bye.
Well, you did a good job, Ed, but I still think one-on-one, it'd be a close call.
Pretty iffy, yeah.
He was playing some pretty tough D, and I'm assuming that ball went through the basket, although we didn't see it. We heard the swish.
You can hear the swish, and that's the first sign.
Coming up on tomorrow's Live at 5, we will have the latest from Hollywood in the Entertainment Report.
And we will continue our special series of reports on local cancer survivors. On Wednesday, you will hear Bob Tucker's story of survival.
That's it for now. Time now for NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw. Have a good night. We'll see you here for Wednesday's Live at 5.
Good night.
A major Supreme Court ruling undercuts school desegregation orders. More on those Washington perks. These belong to the president and the executive branch. And a UN crackdown on Libya over the Pan Am 103 bombing.
This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw, reporting tonight from NBC News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. School desegregation, ordered by the courts and monitored by the courts. Once one of the most controversial issues in America. Well, tonight, there are new rules. The Supreme Court said a suburban Atlanta, Georgia County school district had no duty to correct segregation patterns it didn't create. Today's ruling could lead to a deconstruction of school desegregation in almost 500 school districts. NBC's Kenley Jones on today's case.
The DeKalb School District had argued that its majority black schools became that way because of residential housing patterns, not because of policies that promoted segregation. The Supreme Court agreed in an 8-0 vote. Justice Clarence Thomas did not vote because the case was argued before he came on the bench. Writing for the court, Justice Anthony Kennedy said schools may be released from certain parts of court-ordered integration plans, even if full integration has not been achieved, as long as good faith steps have been taken to eliminate discrimination. But Justice Harry Blackmun, joined by Justices O'Connor and Stevens, said school systems must prove their policies have not made some schools white and others black. That leaves the door open for further challenges. Parents in this case were disappointed.
To take themselves completely out of it, then it makes us wholly, I would say, succumb to the school system. And we don't want to be totally trusting in that manner.
DeKalb School Superintendent Robert Freeman said the parents should not worry.
The court order does not, of course, absolve this or any school district from fair play.
Today's decision leaves the DeKalb School District under federal court supervision in two important respects: faculty assignments and allocation of resources. But student enrollment, who goes where, will no longer be supervised. Like their parents, many students at this 97% black school were disappointed.
If you go from an all-black school and then go out into the real world and it's all white people and you're all alone, then it could, it'd be shocking.
Nothing's wrong with this school, but I think that it would be better to have, more mixed.
If I had my choice, I would want it to be, 50-50.
Approximately 470 school districts across the country, now under federal court supervision, could be affected by today's decision.
That's a good book.
Kenley Jones, NBC News, DeKalb County, Georgia.
And while that was going on in Washington and Atlanta, Bill Clinton was changing his campaign tactics in an effort to head off another Jerry Brown upset a week from today in the big New York primary. NBC's Andrea Mitchell has been out on the always tough New York campaign trail. She's with us tonight. Andrea.
Tom, the Clinton campaign felt it was in so much trouble in New York But instead of trying to avoid Jerry Brown, Clinton is booking joint appearances with him.
Only a week after Clinton said he wouldn't agree to any more debates, he squared off with Brown, today discussing solutions for ailing cities.
It never gets done because the people don't believe there's any way we can move aside the corrupt status quo. Nothing has been done because the people did not vote for a president who would take responsibility for the American people and their problems.
It was a rare chance for Clinton's message to be heard. As a Southerner, New York has been hostile territory. Most of the natives don't trust him. The local media have ignored his policy proposals and bashed him repeatedly. Still, agreeing to debate Brown is a calculated risk.
Not willing to give him a chance to get to the voters if I get the same chance. I'm not so much interested in the combat with Brown as I am having a way to find direct access to the voters to talk about these issues.
Brown is finally getting more scrutiny. Reporters are catching up with the fact that he's switched positions on issues like taxes and abortion and was a high-priced corporate lawyer, contrary to the image he now cultivates.
Hey, by the standards of ex-governors, that's a very reasonable and modest sum.
But what did you do to earn?
I brought in business. That's what I did.
Even though he is a product of the political establishment, Brown has packaged himself as a rebel. Hecklers don't trail him. But Clinton can't even go to the doctor's office without getting razzed on the street.
Any help? You pardon all drug dealers or just the ones that contribute to your campaign?
He's interrupted at every stop.
And you're a phony, and you're dishonest, and you misrepresented yourself.
And even when he's talking about foreign policy, people ask him about his character.
And half the voters question whether you have the honesty to be president. What do you say about that? And I said, well, if I'd been sitting here watching the television, I would too.
A week is a lifetime in politics. The question is whether it's enough time for Clinton to reverse the negative impressions that have damaged his campaign. Tom?
Thank you, Andrea. On Capitol Hill, congressional leaders today were moving to control the perks controversy. The Senate wants to close a pharmacy shop, set prices for doctor services, restrict food service. The House named a new House postmaster today. And the Democrats called a hearing to look into White House perks. NBC's John Cochran tonight.
Democrats want to ask whether 100 workers are really needed to keep the White House spruced up, whether 5 full-time florists are a bit much, whether 5 people are really needed to oversee the artwork and furnishings, whether 34 workers are needed to maintain the grounds and make repairs. No one wants to stint on the president's health, but are senior staffers under so much stress that they need a free gym next to the White House to work off midriff bulge? And speaking of bulges, how about those special dining rooms cabinet officers and top staffers have? And chauffeured government cars are still around, even if John Sununu is not. A former president called for an overhaul today.
A president has to have privacy, has to have security, for instance, but I think a lot of the perks in the executive branch should be eliminated.
One bush aide kept her driver waiting 2 hours while she had lunch at this restaurant just a block from the White House. But it is presidential travel that costs the big bucks. The White House said it spent only $29,000 a year ago, but that would barely keep Air Force One in the air for half an hour. The real numbers, including some campaign expenses, are hidden in the Pentagon's budget.
What we see here is an expenditure of more than likely in excess of $130 million of taxpayers' money that goes undisclosed to the American people.
Republicans said Democrats are just trying to squirm off the hook.
They're trying to divert attention away from the scandals of the U.S. House of Representatives down to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to get this monkey off their backs.
Heavens no, insisted the Democrats, who shrank from any mention of partisan politics. But they are playing hardball, and they're threatening to subpoena reluctant White House aides to testify. John Cochran, NBC News, the White House.
When Nightly News continues in a moment, the United Nations goes after Libya for the Pan Am 103 bombing suspects.
Somebody made a big mistake here.
What's that, Reach?
Well, I'm eating these Harvest Crisp crackers, and I don't get it. Here, taste one.
Okay.
How's that? Great? Huh?
That's good, hon.
Light, crispy?
It's delicious.
Aha! So what's a delicious cracker like Harvest Crisp doing in a box that says low fat, no cholesterol?
Somebody put him in the wrong box.
Well, who could have made such a mistake? Look, Joy, new Garden Crisps. Another delicious low-fat cracker. I love it.
I was tossing and turning.
In medical tests, people fell asleep faster and slept better with Unisom than without.
Now I'm sleeping and sleeping.
Unisom for faster, better sleep.
Now
nighttime, one of the worst times for pain. That's why you need new Ultra Strength Bengay with added power. It's the strongest Bengay ever. Fast relief from muscle aches and minor arthritis pain. With new Ultra Strength Bengay, you can say goodnight to your pain.
The United Nations today tightened the screws on Muammar Gaddafi. It imposed sanctions against Libya for refusing to turn over 2 suspects in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. Not included in the measure, however, was Libya's biggest export, and that's oil. NBC's John Dancy is at the United Nations.
For the diplomats, this day was about international law. For the families and friends of the victims, it was about justice. Their presence in the galleries for the debate was a reminder that this day was about real people, real victims. Sons, daughters, husbands, wives were on the Pan Am jumbo jet when it was blown out of the skies 3 years ago. The U.S. and Britain charged these 2 Libyans are responsible. The UN has demanded Libya turn them over for trial. So far, Libya has refused. Today, the Security Council debated tough sanctions against Libya if it does not turn them over within 2 weeks.
At issue here is whether the international community is prepared to back up its own words with actions.
The sanctions will halt air traffic to and from Libya, embargo arms to Libya, expel a number of Libyan diplomats from UN member countries. Libya has argued before the World Court in the Netherlands that the UN is infringing on Libya's sovereignty. That argument carried weight today with many Arab and African countries.
Sanctions are a last resort measure.
A number of countries were worried about the precedent.
China will abstain on this draft resolution.
My delegation will abstain.
By abstaining on the draft resolution. Now,
when the vote came, the U.S. got 10 yes votes, only 1 more than needed for passage. 5 countries abstained, a polite way of voting no without confronting the big powers. For most of the family and friends, it was enough.
They didn't all agree, but the resolution was passed, and thank God for that.
But even the families were divided over the UN sanctions.
I believe there should be other methods, not the sanctions. And I want justice as much as anybody else.
Looming over today's vote was the threat of military force if Libya does not hand over the suspected terrorists. It could be a tempting option for political candidates George Bush and Britain's John Major. John Dancy, NBC News, the United Nations.
And what about military action? If it comes to that, how might the military action unfold? Well, NBC's Fred Francis is at the Pentagon tonight with some answers. Fred?
Tom, the United Nations is now quite comfortable in this tough guy role. It is easy to flex muscle when the enforcers are the very willing U.S., Britain, and France. The next logical punitive step by the United Nations would be to order a naval blockade. A senior defense official told NBC News a naval blockade of Libya is not only easy, but likely. Libya has 1,000 miles of coastline. As many as 3,000 cargo ships a year deliver the bulk of Libya's imports to 8 cities. During Desert Storm, coalition warships stopped virtually every ship trying to reach Iraq. Pentagon sources say a similar naval blockade of Libya would take only a few weeks to set up. In the past, Gaddafi has threatened Western warships sailing near Libya, but an attack on ships intercepting Libyan-bound vessels could trigger a swift Western military response. But one official here said, based on the UN resolution and U.S. military policy, no military action against Libya is being considered now or in the foreseeable future. Tom?
Fred, why would they not include oil in the embargo? After all, that's a crucial commodity for that country.
The main reason is that the United States is accepting the wishes of Germany and Italy, which gets most of their oil from Libya. And one official said, this opening gambit is a wake-up call for Gaddafi. We can turn the screws tightly and several months from now talk about oil.
All right, thank you very much. Fred Francis, the Pentagon tonight. In other news tonight, Mike Tyson will remain behind bars. The Indiana Court of Appeals today rejected his request for bail pending an appeal.
The medical facts are clear. Tylenol is so gentle on your stomach, doctors even recommend it to their ulcer patients for everyday aches and pains. They know Tylenol can't aggravate an ulcer the same way aspirin can. That's important for all of us to know. And so is this. Hospitals use Tylenol 23 times more than all aspirin brands combined. Tylenol, the pain reliever hospitals use most.
Besides a powerful V6 engine and a gripping new suspension, the Isuzu Trooper has been thoughtfully redesigned.
Let me see that hand.
To include a tiny little knob.
We're four-wheeling now, buddy.
To make everything right in the world again.
Red Lobster may have gone too far this time. A full pound of tempting shrimp overflowing your plate. Red Lobster's never offered you, whoops, so much on one plate. 10 grilled shrimp, 15 butterfly, 11 scampi. A full pound of our biggest and best shrimp for a limited time. So much shrimp with all the extras, including a doggy bag.
Red Lobster for the seafood lover in you.
Our daily difference now, Decision 92. Barely 1/100th of 1% of the federal budget goes to fund the National Endowment for the Arts, but its profile as a political lightning rod, much higher than that. NBC's Mike Jensen tonight tells us what the fuss is all about.
For 27 years, the nation's artistic community has gotten support from the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, without much fanfare but with growing criticism. When Patrick Buchanan, campaigning for the presidency, tried to score points against President Bush by attacking the NEA, it came to a head.
They have been subsidizing both filthy and blasphemous art.
President Bush fired NEA Chairman John Frohmeyer. Buchanan kept up the attack with a TV commercial.
Bush continued to fund this kind of art.
The Wall Street Journal suggested it might be time to cut off NEA funding. And Republican National Chairman Richard Bond said the government should get out of the arts business.
I mean, they have made an issue out of things which 99.9999% of the American public would never see, would never know about, would never care about. And to abolish the NEA because it's controversial, my heavens, that to me is not what I would call leadership and not what I would call courage.
With a budget of $175 million, the NEA supports everything from major museums like New York's Metropolitan to folk art exhibits. The money is spread all over the country.
South Carolina, for example, gets $2 million, enough to keep a fairly poor state rich in the arts. Billy Shepard is music director at the Kershaw Arts Center in Camden, South Carolina.
Everyone in this county has been enriched from the experience of participating here at the center.
From a distance, there is harmony.
It is unbelievable, unthinkable for the money to stop at this point.
In Columbia, South Carolina, the Museum of Art just received a $25,000 grant to develop educational programs and to restore its Renaissance art gallery.
But he was a cocky little bugger, all set to take on the world.
The city's only stage theater, the Trustus, got $7,000 to help put on productions. That's a typical size NEA grant. Most of them are matched locally.
We've gone from just a mom-and-pop two-person operation to 9 people on salary. We have become a legitimate small business in our community. And that grant, the NEA has allowed us to do that.
Very little NEA funding goes directly to artists. More often, it provides them with low-cost studio and exhibit space.
This gallery is being known or establishing itself as showing sort of leading edge or contemporary imagery, and people are beginning to warm up to that kind of work.
There will always be controversy. By its very nature, art goes beyond convention, beyond reality. It pushes the boundaries. But the art world knows, and the government knows, that without taxpayer help, the richness and diversity of art in America could disappear. Mike Jensen, NBC News, New York.
In a moment, more news and the latest on the economy, as well as John Chancellor's commentary.
It's here, Domino's new, better-tasting pizza.
More melted cheese, big batter toppings, tender, tasty crust.
More More melted cheese.
Tender, tastier crust.
From this day on, every Domino's pizza is going to be better than ever.
Nobody knows like Domino's how you like more melted cheese.
Big, better topping. Tender, tastier crust.
Try a medium with unlimited toppings, now just $9.99. Another's $4 more.
We just put 70,000 miles on a Plymouth Acclaim, the lowest priced 6-passenger car in America. Then we asked 100 drivers to compare the Acclaim with this new Honda Accord for comfort, performance, and overall superiority. 59 out of 100 preferred the Acclaim overall. We were blown away by the results, and so was the Accord.
Now get $1,000 cash back on Plymouth Acclaim.
The time, morning.
I'd like to wake up to this coffee in the morning.
The place, the 5-star Arizona Biltmore.
The aroma is wonderfully enticing.
The coffee, not the restaurant's usual fresh brewed. Today, it's been secretly switched to Folgers Crystals.
It would help wake us up in the morning.
Wake us up even
Get us
better.
going. I'm amazed. Actually, I'm overwhelmed. It's instant coffee.
This would start my day off great.
Mountain-grown Folgers Crystals. Coffee rich enough to be served in America's finest restaurants.
I'll drink to that.
Indianapolis, Daytona, Pomona, Baja. Why do we go to such distant places to put Craftsman tools to the test? If you're gonna guarantee a tool forever, it's gotta take the torture even guys like you dish out. 1,600 Craftsman hand tools, made in America, guaranteed forever.
You can count on me.
Only at Sears.
In economic news, there are some encouraging numbers tonight. The government's key index of leading indicators continued on the rise for the second month in a row. And one of those indicators, consumer confidence, well, it recorded its biggest monthly jump in a year. John Chancellor is here with commentary now. He, too, has been looking at the economy. John?
Tom, the patient is very ill. The best doctors have been called in. The prognosis is so grim that the doctors now recommend a new and extremely dangerous kind of treatment. The patient, of course, is us, the American economy, ravaged by 3 full years of miserable growth or actual recession. Even if recovery comes this year, it will be anemic. The doctors in this case are the best economists in the United States, 6 Nobel laureates and other stars from academe, Wall Street, and industry, more than 100 in all. They sent their nonpartisan, bipartisan prescription yesterday to the President, to the Congress, and the Federal Reserve in an unprecedented open letter. And here's what they say. The deficits are still the fundamental problem, but the economy is in such desperate need of stimulus that the deficits will have to grow even bigger. $50 billion a year must be given to state and local governments to be invested in education and infrastructure. This would make the deficits higher, but only until the economy gets healthy again. Investment is the road to prosperity, so an investment tax credit is needed. Interest rates must be lowered yet again, but any kind of personal income tax cut is absolutely rejected. Increasing the deficits represents a huge change in mainstream economic thought. Last year, this kind of consensus would have been impossible. A policy of deliberately increasing the deficit is appallingly risky. But that's what the best economic minds in the country now want done because the American economy is that sick. Tom?
Thank you, John. One cost to the economy, of course, has been crime. American homeowners now are installing alarm systems in record numbers. All well and good, but police and fire officials say they're being swamped with false alarms. And in some instances, they're now refusing to respond. More on this from NBC's George Lewis.
The office of a Seattle burglar alarm company. All sorts of alarms going off thanks to a power failure in one of the city's neighborhoods.
So that power outage is going all over Linwood?
Nura 6, an audible residential alarm.
Big city police departments say false alarms take up an awful lot of their time and manpower.
Status on your alarm, sir.
Out of 100 alarms that we would handle, 95 of those are going to be false alarms. 5 of those are going to be actual, either attempted break-ins or we're going to make an apprehension.
Seattle has a tough new law which fines property owners $125 for each incident when there are more than 2 false alarms. But police concede that the fines have not cut down on the problem. Other police departments simply don't respond to all the burglar alarm calls they receive. In Riverside, California, about 60 miles east of Los Angeles, police recently had a policy of ignoring calls from alarm systems that were not licensed by the city. A woman who surprised an intruder in her garage and who hit the panic button on her alarm system became a victim of that policy. The woman who lives in this neighborhood said she was beaten and raped while police ignored the alarm. The reason, she had not paid the $25 license fee.
There's an alleged rape, and the officers didn't respond at an appropriate time because there was no permit on file. We immediately changed the policy.
But as people add more and more security systems, raising the potential for false alarms, the owners of those systems should probably be asking whether police will be ready, willing, and able to respond in cases where there's a real problem.
False alarm.
George Lewis, NBC News, Los Angeles.
On Wall Street today, the Dow Industrials were virtually unchanged in moderate trading.
What entrepreneurs do is they find an idea and then they risk everything every day.
We design contemporary fashions from traditional African fabrics. We're based in Oakland, but we do a lot of business with LA and Seattle.
What I recommended for her was the AT&T Small Business Option Area Code Plan, which gives them an automatic 10% discount to 1 or 2 area codes that they call most. Every customer has a goal. What we want to do is help them to achieve that goal.
We can make a difference. AT&T. Call us.
In Japan, they buy a remarkable new car that comes with 7,041 miles already on it. The Honda Accord from Marysville, Ohio, the best-selling American-made car in Japan.
Royal Caribbean, paradise surrounds me. There's no place like this on land. All my cares, they're behind me. The world's in my command.
One cruise line has been named best in passenger satisfaction 10 years in a row. Royal Caribbean, the grand resorts of the 7 seas.
Royal Caribbean.
What you are about to see will bring tears to your eyes. As close as you can get to real tears, because Murine with Natural Tears formula is closer to your real tears than any other eye drop. Murine Natural Tears formula.
I need a laxative that can work dependably.
Doxidan can.
But can it be gentle?
Doxidan can. Doxidan works dependably overnight with a special ingredient for gentle relief.
Dependable, yes. Gentle, yes.
Doxidan can.
By now, the world knows that Silence of the Lambs was the big winner at the Academy Awards last night, but the real star was the host for the evening, Billy Crystal. Crystal set the tone when he walked on stage wearing the mask of Hannibal Lecter, the gruesome character played by Best Actor winner Anthony Hopkins in The Silence of the Lambs.
I'm having some of the Academy over for dinner. Care to join me?
Early on, 72-year-old Jack Palance set up what would become Crystal's running joke when he showed that old guys can be tough guys.
I just was given a bulletin. Jack Palance is now on the Stairmaster. Jack Palance just bungee jumped off the Hollywood sign. This just in, Jack Palance has won the New York State primary.
Then Crystal introduced the great comedy director, Hal Roach, 100 years old. He gave the world Laurel and Hardy and the Little Rascals, but Roach had no microphone.
I think that's fitting because Mr. Roach started in silent films.
And Crystal managed a small commentary on Bill Clinton's admission that he had experimented with marijuana.
Didn't inhale. And I made believe I had a good time. Not. And I've just been informed that Jack Palance will be hosting the show next year, so good night.
That's Nightly News for Tuesday night. I'm Tom Brokaw. I'll see you tomorrow night.
Up next on your 24-hour news source.
A high-speed chase Sunday night raises some questions. Police say they acted properly. I'm Mary Mills. I'll have that story.
When the phone rings at the governor's office, the message is clear: don't raise taxes.
And if state safety inspectors show up at work sites like this one, home builders say they're now ready.
These stories plus a live report with the Harlem Globetrotters at Vets.
Has your video equipment lost its charm? Then get to Best Buy. Now through Wednesday, every TV, every VCR, every camcorder, and every movie is on sale. So if you get wrapped up in watching or making video movies, take a spin to Best Buy.
It's here, Domino's new, better-tasting pizza.
More melted cheese, big batter toppings, tender, tastier crust. More melted cheese, big batter toppings.
Tender, tastier crust.
From this day on, every Domino's pizza is going to be better than ever.
Nobody knows like Domino's how you like more melted cheese, big better topping, tender, tastier crust.
Try a medium with unlimited toppings, now just $9.99. Another's $4 more.
Now there's a book from Anderson Window Centers that turns windows and patio doors into works of art. For a brilliant composition of sunlight and living space. Get brighter home ideas, created by Merida, publishers of Better Homes and Gardens. Only at your Anderson Window Center store.
Kira Lumber Company at Tumwa, S. Hanson Lumber Ames, Windows and Doors of Iowa, Des Moines.
Live from WHO TV 13, where the news comes first 24 hours a day. John Bachman, Kim Kerrigan, Rick Silvestrini with sports, and meteorologist Gary Amble with the weather. This is News Center 13 at 6.
Authorities say this man led them on a wild, high-speed chase this week. Today, Des Moines police defending the actions of their officers. Good evening. Some questions tonight about how to stop a high-speed chase. At one point Sunday, police considered the use of deadly force.
Tonight, Assistant Chief Kane Robinson says officers involved in Sunday's chase took the right action. Robinson says there was reason to consider deadly force, but the decision not to fire at the truck driver was the right one. Robinson makes it very clear the department has a policy about using gunfire, which it follows closely. Fortunately, this particular chase ended without incident.
But for a time, there were some tense moments for the officers involved. News Center 13's Mary Mills now with a look at how the situation was handled. Mary?
Well, John, when you hear the scanner traffic, you know adrenaline was flowing. You know the officers had little time to talk strategy. Tonight, their superior officer says they responded well under pressure.
I'm going to take them out here. It's starting to get ridiculous.
Des Moines police looking for ways to stop this man, 19-year-old Scott Seeger. Sunday night, Seeger led authorities on a dangerous high-speed ride. One officer suggested deadly force.
He's trying to kill us here. You see if they got a cold brain that'll make a decision to give this guy a round or two, 500 disregard. You don't have any use of deadly force yet.
We've had the order to back down. We're not using deadly force.
Assistant Chief Kane Robinson listened to the police transmission. He says he understands why deadly force was considered.
They were chasing someone, it turns out was committing a felony. He was armed, engaged in some very dangerous driving.
Still, he says the supervising officer made the right call.
If a person is fleeing from you and has not already injured someone else, that's a case where it's very unlikely that we would use deadly force.
Robinson says police policy is very specific on when deadly force is appropriate. That includes self-defense, defense of another officer, or a third party.
That doesn't mean that in some extremely dangerous circumstance we might not try and push a vehicle off the road or do some other things. We're talking here about shooting, though. So.
Now, again, in this particular chase, things did end peacefully. There were no injuries, little damage, and the suspect was arrested. He says in this case, the policy definitely worked.
All right. Thank you very much. Mary Mills reporting for us.
How do you balance the state budget and still pay for those court-ordered wage hikes? Governor Branstad seems ready to impose furloughs on state workers. Democratic legislative leaders say alternatives should be considered, but House Speaker Bob Arnold concedes it may be too late.
If the governor sets his feet in stone and decides to do furloughs as opposed to talking with us, we can't stop him unless a court decides that he's acting illegally.
Now, a new survey suggests that Iowans aren't pleased with any of the proposed solutions to balance the budget. The survey was commissioned by the Iowa State Extension Service, and among the questions asked, should a tax increase be approved to solve the